Welcome to the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast, where we remember a time when stacks of cards were held together with rubber bands and Mickey mantles were put in bike spokes. We hope you will enjoy and reminisce as you come along with us as we tell stories about the baseball cards from the Golden Age of Baseball. We will examine the state of the vintage baseball card market and talk to some of the greatest collectors in the hobby. You won't be hearing us talk about any chrome or shiny cards here. Now, to take you on this retrospective journey, here's your host, direct from the shallow end of the gene pool, my son, Mike Moynihan.
Yo, and hello everybody, Mike Moynihan here. I keep wanting to say baseball collector every time, and I can't get over that habit. Not a bad habit to have. Welcome to another episode of the Golden Age of Cardboard podcast. Man, I'm telling you, I should stop this and re-record it, but I'm not going to because it's just funny. As many videos as someone might do or recordings they might do, you still mess up every once in a while. But welcome to the show. You know, it's been a crazy last week for our country, crazy times we're in. It's 2020, just keeps going on. But yeah, we're just going to sit and talk about the hobby a little bit. And I'm really excited about it because I've got one of my best friends in the hobby here to talk to us tonight. You guys all know him. He's the Cardboard Oracle, and it's Eric, Those Back Pages. Hey, Eric.
Hello, friends. Those Back Pages here. I hope you're well. I'm glad to be here, Mike.
Thanks, man. I am well. Thank you for asking.
Excellent.
Or hoping that I was well. So what's it like in New York right now? I heard it's Indian summer going on up there.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. It's been in the 70-degree area, actually, the last few days. It's kind of a whirlwind. It was about 8 days ago, we had tremendous windstorms and got down in the 30s, and now it's been around 70 the last couple of days. It's quite strange.
Yeah, but nice though, right?
Yeah. I mean, nice, but probably be back in the 30s next week. You never know.
I wonder if I should just do this too.
You can if you want.
Well, it'll be weird. I'm not even looking at you, so I might as well just talk. This is a podcast, by the way. So, right?
That's right. It's a podcast. Yeah.
So people are watching this on YouTube. You can just put your phone down or whatever, because you can just listen to this.
Yeah, there's nothing to see but us old guys. Yeah.
Nothing to see here. And that's what I want the topic to be tonight, Eric. You and I talked earlier. For people that don't know, Eric and I are just about the same age. Eric's my elder by a couple of years, but we've both been in the hobby 40 plus years. Eric, for sure, I'm coming up on it. And so through our collective experience, I wanted to talk about and reminisce about times of past. And in particular, I want to talk about hobby shops. I want to talk about card shops, the LCS. And I want to just have a nice conversation about maybe differences that we see today in local card shops and maybe telling stories about what it was like when we were younger. I think that would be kind of fun.
Oh, yeah.
Because I have incredible memories of the card shops when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And talking about how the hobby, we can talk a little bit about how it's changed and the world's changed. And you and I we've been a part of that the whole time, really, right? I mean, I know you took a break in your collecting, but
I did. I had my first retirement back in 98.
And restarted
came back full bore in 2005.
2005. So you were out of the game for 7 years?
Yeah, about 7 years. I mean, there was a little bit of time there in 2003, the end of 2002. I dabbled a little bit, but I don't really count that aspect of it.
Well, let me ask you this first question. Do you remember your first trip to a card shop?
The first exact trip, I do not. But
Yeah,
I
I
did
don't either.
spend, what's that?
I don't either. I wish I had some wonderful story to tell here, but I don't.
I don't remember specifically the first time or the first shop, but many of my early encounters were with card/comic shops. They, the one in particular, I was born and raised in Queens, New York, and there's no need to give them a plug. They're not around anymore. But, they were probably, 75, 25 comics to cards, but they had a very, they had a full showcase, and they had binders, and you could look through the binders, and they had the sheets in the binders with the price stickers for, the asking price for each card type of deal. And, obviously that is now a long gone thing. I mean, well, I guess I can't speak in complete terms, but I believe that, that's something of the past. You would look through an album and you would say, "Oh, I want this card for a quarter," and you would tell the person working behind the counter, "Hey, I want this one," and they would, remove it from the sleeve for you, from the sheet, and then start a tab up for you, type of thing.
Yeah, my early memories of going to card shops were, I only have happy memories of that because it was always a special occasion that I would go to a card shop when I was a kid.
Okay, yeah.
And I didn't do the, go to a card shop every week or anything like that. And
Ah,
I can remember going and, there's always, I have this idea of what a card shop used to smell like, if that makes any sense at all.
totally makes sense to me.
I mean, if I think about it hard enough, I can almost smell the smell of what
Oh,
a
yeah.
card shop smells like.
Yep.
And it's, I don't know, a unique smell, I think, which is probably weird to be talking about.
Well, to put it in perspective for the listeners, probably a strange brew of cardboard, paper, and nicotine.
Right.
Yeah, that's how it was back in the day.
And, I remember there's always showcases, there's always boxes of cards to thumb through,
Mm-hmm.
Singles, stuff like that. Cases with cards that look like they've been there forever.
Yep.
Um,
Remember
and
those? Remember
go ahead.
those old? Oh man, I was thinking about this today when we were discussing, when you had asked me if we could do this episode, and I said absolutely, and I got to thinking, and remember those crap? They're not hard plastics, but without screws.
Yes.
They were like a U shape, and you had to pull them apart and put your card inside.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I still have some of those, actually.
Oh, nice.
I don't have any cards in them, but I think I just have
No,
blank ones. I
no,
never throw anything away. So,
no. Now we know better than to put cards in that type of thing.
for sure.
The 1-inch screw down loose sides and stuff like that.
For sure. I remember, obviously, you mentioned binders. I remember, flipping through binders, and the basic idea of a card show, or card shop. I keep saying show. Maybe I'm excited about this weekend. I get to go to a show in Dallas.
Yeah, I'm a bit jelly about that for sure.
Yeah, a bunch of friends and big show, 400 table show.
Nice. Get some footage. Get some footage.
We'll definitely get some footage. But flipping through binders, it's weird. I don't ever go, man, I was looking for X or Y or Z. I just knew I wanted cards.
Right.
100%
agree.
Because let's see, this would have been probably my first card shop experiences were early to mid 80s, like 83, 84, 85, right. That time frame.
Yeah, same for me.
And so you had three major card companies, Topps, Donruss, and Flea. at the time. And Flea and Donruss were always cheaper than Tops for whatever reason. Well, they were cheaper than Tops, but buying packs here and there, building sets, not because I ever completed them when I was a kid, but I just wanted as many cards as I could get.
Right, you had to try, right.
And, it was just, it seemed very simple. Go into a card shop, find something you like, and beg your mom to buy it for you,
Now I wonder if it's a where you lived versus where I lived. I lived in the city. So, the shop was, a mile and a half away, 2 miles away from my apartment. So I could
Okay.
bike. Back then you could ride bikes as a young child without issue. You just had to lock your bike so no one would steal it. But, I wonder if that has an influence. Like you said, you didn't get to go except for special occasions where all I had to do was get on the bike and say, I'm going to go, not, sometimes you're grounded and such, but, make sure you do your homework, yada, yada, yada. But it was just a bike ride away. So I think that might have had more of an impact. I'm not sure. But, and before I forget, and some of the listeners probably can relate to this. And it's something that has stuck with me all these years. We're talking, 37, 38 years later. I was your average looking husky 13-year-old boy going to the card/comic shop. And, I was into both at the time. And I remember going in, if anyone's ever watched The Simpsons, comic book guy, that's actually, well, that used to actually still is kind of a real thing. And I distinctly remember going like, hey, what they used to have with the comics on the comic side of the shop, they used to have the wall. They would put all the good books on the wall, in the Mylars with the push pin on the cork board type of thing. Every time I would go in, hey, can I see that? The guy would flat out say no. Like not the owner, the guy that worked there would be a snob about it. I was like, I'm pretty sure.
Power trip or something?
What's that?
Kind of a power trip type thing?
Exactly. He was like, he pretty much had the attitude is you don't have any money, so I'm not going to get up off the stool and go show you something you're not going to buy. And that always stuck with me. Like, that's just, that's not fair. You don't know what somebody has in their pocket. I could have just come from my birthday party and I could have had a pocket full of money. And that applies even to today. If you're selling something at a show or a shop, don't judge the book by its cover. You don't know what somebody has in their pocket. You don't know what they're willing to spend. So if you treat everyone with respect, it's a good thing because, like I said, that has stuck with me all these years later. And actually, when I got back into the comic thing in 2012, I made sure and I went out and I bought those comics that a-hole wouldn't let me even look at. So I bought them so I could say I own them now. It's like a big F you to that guy.
Yeah, I remember always being, and I had several different shops over the years that, one would shut down, another one would open. And I remember there being several here in Fort Worth.
By the late 80s, there were probably several.
Yeah. And, and shows were happening, I was going to shows too, but the shop was kind of where you went to get your basic needs met, right?
Right.
And buying binders and supplies and pages and stuff like that.
In between shows, right.
Yeah, right. And I remember one old guy that ran a show, long beard, not unlike you, Eric, but he was always super nice.
Oh,
Not necessarily like giving me stuff or anything like that. And that wasn't an expectation either. It was just more of
right.
it was just always nice. And I remember, always looking at the cards in the glass cases with awe. And
Oh, yes.
man, someday I want to have a Mickey Mantle. And they were all raw back then, right? There was no grading. There
Nope.
wasn't third-party grading. And so everything was raw. They might have some type of descriptor on the price tag, in NM plus or NM or whatever, some type of condition descriptor, which was usually completely inaccurate. If I would really go back,
Everybody had their own, right?
one man's mint is another man's very good, right? And
Yeah, that's true.
so, well, it's mint. There's no creases in it. Yeah, but the corners look like they're completely rounded over. Well, so but I always looked at those cards in the case and like, oh man, and I never knew, like when you're a kid, I didn't think, well, I'm going to be collecting when I'm 47 years old. That wasn't,
No, because that was old people.
Oh my gosh, totally old people. And I didn't even think past, what I was going to have for lunch the next day.
That's right.
Not about longevity in the hobby
Nope.
But I distinctly know that I didn't think I want to own those cards someday.
You did think that for sure.
I don't know that I did, honestly, though.
Oh, really? I did for sure. Not that I'd ever own them, but I wanted to,
Well, I wanted to own them in the moment, no doubt.
Oh, sure, yeah.
No doubt. But
no money for that, no.
Oh, someday I can own those. And now that I'm an adult, I'm an old man or whatever, but
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm starting to acquire these cards that I never thought I would own ever.
That's right.
And that's been happening over the past decade or so, like it has for both of us.
Yep.
And it's, back then I was just happy to get
card,
any card, and cards like the Mattingly rookies and I could never afford the Donruss rookie. I had to get Pop's rookie.
Right.
And when 84 Donruss came out, man, I remember it was a big deal because it was such a pretty set, and
it was always expensive. Like the 84 Flare update was never cheap.
Yeah, it was.
I remember when the 84 Flare update came out, and it was never cheap. Tops traded was much cheaper than 84.
And then we had Upper Deck come in the game in 89. What a game changer that was, right?
Oh, yeah. I was working in a shop then.
And I remember boxes of Upper Deck being at Sam's, along with Score and Tops, and you could always choose. And I can't remember what the price differences were. I wish I had a way to know what they were, but I remember them not being, terribly expensive, but they were more expensive. And so when we went to Sam's, I always got a Score box because they were the cheapest.
Because it was the cheaper. The Upper Deck was at least $1 a pack if you could find it.
But back then I didn't care, right? That's the funny thing about it. I was just happy to have some cards to open.
Well, yeah, it was actually back then. It was probably most definitely more about quantity.
Right.
You
totally,
get,
right?
Full box of Score, 36 packs, 15 cards per pack. That's glorious right there.
There was a time I was collecting Darryl Strawberry, which you'll be happy to know as a
nice.
man.
I did know that, yes.
And well, not everybody may know that out there. But,
that's true.
So I collected Darryl Strawberry, and back then there was no eBay. There was no, you got cards by going to your shop or going to the show. And what new Darryl Strawberries do you have? I would ask. And so this is high school for me at this point, and I never owned as a kid the 83 Tops Traded Darryl Strawberry.
Oh yeah.
I think back then it was a $15 or $20 card, which was
which was a lot. Yep.
But I remember getting hundreds of 89 Upper Deck Darryl Strawberries, and I thought that quantity mattered. Like, dude, I have 400 of this card now. Like, that's crazy. Which I still have, by the way. I told you I don't get rid of anything,
Right.
but I have so much Daryl Strawberry stuff, Eric. It's ridiculous.
Nice.
And I mean, he was a big deal in the 80s, Daryl
Oh,
Strawberry.
yes. Oh, yes. Such a swing.
Oh, beautiful swing. Only to be surpassed by Griffey's swing later, but that's okay.
Yeah.
They both hit left-handed, so that's good.
That's good company, though.
So you're right. I mean, quantity mattered more than quality. Now, again, I wanted the 83 Topps traded card, which was quote unquote quality, but it was unattainable. So I just did the next best thing and got a bunch of all the other junk that I could get. And finding unique cards typically didn't happen at your shop usually, right? Because
it's mostly focused on local.
Right. Local and or
Super players.
Yeah, simple, right?
Right.
And so the oddball stuff you'd have to find at shows.
Oh, yeah.
The weird and wacky stuff.
SCD, get it mail order.
Right. And I remember, God, for a while I didn't have a Beckett subscription.
Sure.
I would just go to the shop and buy a Beckett.
Right.
Back in the mid 80s.
Yeah, we all did.
And then I finally was able to, either I paid for it or my mom bought me for Christmas or something, a Beckett subscription.
Yeah.
And most teenage boys, or I guess the best analogy to how I felt getting my Beckett every month was maybe how you felt in your 20s if you had a Playboy subscription or something,
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
Like I read every Beckett cover to cover as a kid.
Did you get the SCD or no?
Nope, just Beckett. I was kind of brand loyal there.
SCD was weekly. Beautiful.
And I remember some tough stuffs,
Yep, tough stuff. CCP was probably before your time.
Yeah, I think it was.
That was before Beckett. Beckett kind of squashed that. Current card prices, I think it was what it stood for. The baseball was monthly, and then they had one issue that covered the other sports, and I think that was either every 6 months or every 4 months. It was not every month because it just was not popular.
Do you remember the Becketts would come out also? I'd buy the annual Beckett.
Of course.
The giant kind of master checklist of every card or whatever.
Yep.
That was always a big deal.
And you were fortunate enough because you stuck to just baseball. But back then, there was a new Beckett every week for each sport.
Now, back when I was younger, I had a bunch of football cards.
Oh, okay.
Early to mid 80s football. I was a huge Cowboys fan, still am, sadly today.
Well, you're not alone. There are a lot of Cowboy fans.
And collecting guys like Randy White and Tony Dorsett, and so I was totally into football cards too. Baseball, way more, no doubt. But I wasn't oblivious to that. Now, basketball I never got into as a kid, but it didn't really start until, the real first basketball set of my era was kind of that 86, 87 Flea set, right?
Oh, yeah.
But even then, I wasn't into it as much. I loved the Mavericks. I was a basketball fan. I just didn't collect.
Right. The cards were not very popular, even in 86. I was buying 86 Flea packs, and you kind of had to do it on the hush-hush. You didn't really say, hey, I'm buying these basketball cards, because it just was not popular.
And then, in the 90s, it's funny as I think through my card journey, my card career, so to speak. I remember when I was at the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, going to shops there. And there were I think there were two different shops. One of them was just super good. And they seemed to always have stuff I wanted for my growing Daryl Strawberry collection. Right. And I started collecting in the early 90s. I started collecting Juan Gonzalez because he was a Ranger.
Yeah.
A couple home run titles. This guy is insanely good. And
I agree with that.
he would have tons of Juan Gonzalez stuff. I'm like, golly, I'm in Colorado and I could pick this stuff up. And my budget was very limited because I was in college and broke, like most of it during that time of our lives.
Right.
So it was very particular, very, but what's funny is the card shops weren't that different. There were more products in the wall because you start getting into Leaf and Ultra and
Right. As yeah, when they went to the 90s,
yeah, you start seeing more and more products come out.
Yep.
I remember opening boxes of Ultra in '92 and thinking it was the prettiest set I'd ever seen.
It was at the time.
And collecting that whole set, did that whole set as a kid. Or I wasn't a kid then, I guess I was
19,
20, getting close to that. And so, but the shops just stayed the same. It was in terms of just kind of this, there's all this old, like you'd see old pennants at a shop or old jerseys and stuff that just seemed to stay there for years and not change.
And I'm sure some of the people listening have some of those shops that are still like that today.
Right. And that's kind of what I want to talk about next is what would you say you see differences between shops today that you might go into and shops that were back in the 80s and maybe early 90s?
Well, differences or similarities?
Well, I guess by describing the differences, you'll also talk about the similarities. So how about both?
All right. Well, the similarities, there's still that curmudgeon comic book guy type of person at this point, usually owning the shop because they usually don't have employees. These shops, there are them. I mean, not all of them, but these shops tend to, they don't really pay attention to you when you walk in. They're not the cleanliest places to shop. They are known to find some gold mines from time to time because they tend not to keep up on the internet too much. And like, they're not really, I guess if you wanted to put a stereotype on it, you could say they're the type of shop that looks everything up in the Beckett itself. Like, oh, how much is this thing go? Oh, let me look it up. And then they whip out the price guide. So either it's going to be way overpriced or way underpriced, depending on the card, the player and whatnot. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the shop that's, on the ball. They're moved into the internet age. They're probably active on eBay. They tend to have staff actually. They tend to be more friendly when you walk in. They're not afraid to make eye contact, ask you how you're doing. Actually, seem pleased that you're actually there. They tend to have more of a singles presence, actually. Not that the other shops wouldn't have singles, but the other shops would have outdated singles. Yeah, I think that's the basic difference. I mean, anyone who's done this for a while has the stereotypical, old curmudgeon type of card shop owner that's been there a long time. Some say too long. Versus the up to date, like into everything type of new environment. And from what unfortunately, I don't have a strictly card shop in my area, but I have friends that do, and I actually see, with social media and everything being 2020, you see some of these celebrities even opening shops now. So it's good to see.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been to card shops even in the last 3, 4, 5 years. When I walk in and there's a card I might want in the case, and I'll say, hey, and it's got a price tag on it that looks like it was put on there 20 years before.
Right.
It's faded and brown and it's turned from white to brown. And it'll have some price on it. Let's say it's $40 just to
Right.
have something to talk about with numbers. And I look online and there's the same card, I obviously do graded cards as you do. So
Yep.
let's say it's the same grade, same card, and it's $20, let's say.
Right.
And and it's buy it now. Like I could buy it. I'm like, and I show the shop owner, I'm like, look, I could buy this card right now for $20, same grade you have. I'll do it for $20. No, I can't do that. Really? Why not? Well, because I'm into it more than I hear that all. I used to hear that all the time.
Yes. Oh, yes. That's never changed.
I'm into it for more than that. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's not my problem. Like that's not, do you?
Exactly.
And I hear you use this term a lot, and I love it. I'm offering real money for a piece of cardboard.
Right.
Do you want to make a sale today or not? And it's like these people they just kind of dig their heels in on certain things, not understanding the volatility of the sports card market, as we have seen so much of it the last couple of years, right?
Right.
But it's been that way for a long time. I just don't think the numbers just weren't as big. It's not that people think that sports card price volatility is new. It's not.
Yeah, it's not new.
It's been around as long as there have been cards around, and
The numbers are new, but the event itself is not new.
right, exactly. And so you have, and I'll end up not buying the card because I'll go home and buy it now and be done with it.
Right.
And
Exactly.
and they say, well, you can hold it in your hand, you can look at it, you can walk out of here with it. I'm like, I'm not that impatient.
Well, I mean, it depends. If the guy's like, I'll do 25, all right, that's fine.
Sure.
Yeah,
There's a point where the idea of walking out with it has some monetary value, right?
Exactly. Yes.
And so, but that idea that people are so inflexible.
Yeah, like you said, they dig their heels in, and that's that.
And that's unfortunate. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's not.
Right.
You don't say it all the time. There's always another one out there.
Right.
We say that to each other because it's true. There's tons of 52 Manels out there, as much as people. Let's use that card as an example.
Right.
It's not a question of whether or not you can buy one.
I'd like to say it's not rare, it's costly.
Right. Yeah, I say that too, and I just say it always usually as you can buy you can find any card you want. It's can you afford it?
Right.
You want to pay what the person's asking.
Exactly.
And I don't know, the shops to me today, on a basic standpoint, the card shop has not the basic structure of a card shop hasn't changed in half a century.
It doesn't seem like it, does it?
Right? You've got showcases and boxes and unopened wax, or ready to be bought, packs to be bought individually if you want, complete sets on a rack somewhere in the shop, all of stuff that nobody wants. That's why it's there. That's why nobody bought it.
That's right.
Am I wrong in saying that for a half century, the basic structure of a card shop is the exact same?
For the most part, I agree with that. I mean, obviously, like I said, there's some of these new hip cats that are, up with the times, and you'll see them. You go to that type of shop, they'll have Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, comics, everything, toys, figures. They're keeping up with the times. I mean, they are familiar with social media. They're familiar with what's hot right now because at the end of the day, that's their job, is to sell stuff. So, if you have an opportunity to sell stuff, you'd be foolish not to.
Yeah, a lot of shops today, especially, probably more than when we were kids, have a lot more high-end memorabilia, on the walls. Jerseys signed by Mike Trout, or
Right.
some hot football player, whatever. And again, those are all things that when I look at the prices, I go, oh, hell no, you know? And I don't know if they just do it as decoration or if they're really trying to sell it, you know? If they sold that jersey, they'd lose us, you know, they have to take it off the wall and put something else up there.
Yeah.
But that seems like expensive wallpaper to me, you know?
Yeah. That's kind of dead weight stuff, really.
It seems like it to me, for sure. But you see a lot of shops today that have that. And I don't remember that back when we were kids. I think I saw a lot more posters.
Yeah.
And photographs.
Yeah. The autograph stuff really didn't, I would say late 80s.
Right.
When it really started the wave of autographs and signed bats, stuff like that. Baseballs, obviously.
Yeah, the meme was a lot different. It was just, remember all the old Sports Illustrated posters with the white mirrors?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I used to have those. For that.
Loved them. Had them all over my Buddy Bell and Danny White and
nice.
You know, people like that most people listening to this probably have never even heard of those guys, but
yeah, you never know.
That's true. You never know. But I want people to think back, especially the kind of that older generation that might be listening to this vintage baseball card podcast.
Right.
I in the comments below, I'd love to hear stories about card shops and but that memory of walking in and what are you going to find and what are you going to get, and it exists today just as much as it did when I was 12, you know?
Yes, I agree with that totally. It's, you know, and the same thing kind of applies to shows as well.
For sure.
I mean, we all had our own whatever budget it may have been. And I always divvied up my budget between wax and singles. Like I always had to leave the show with some wax to open. I know. Hard to believe, but back then I had no problem opening packs. And then singles I wanted to buy.
What do you think it is that's the joy of that hunt? What do you think is that? I don't know. Why do we love it so much?
I think, honestly, it's a gene. I think we're born with it. I think we're born collectors. I don't think you can force anyone to be a collector. And you know, when I was a young man, a teenager, I tried to get a couple of my friends to, hey, you should collect. Never clicked with them. I still know them to this day, but they don't have any interest. I mean, they you know, they give you the when I show them cards, they give you the, you know, the nod and the smile. You know, oh, that's great, but they're really not that uninterested. But I think for us, it's a gene. It's something, and I've said this many times that, you know, if we're not collecting cards, we're collecting comics. We're collecting precious metals. We're collecting bottle caps. We're collecting coins. Something, you know. It's if you do this, if you're collecting long enough, you go through a lot of phases, and then you kind of migrate back to your favorite. Like I know a lot of guys right now that are very fed up with, you know, what we like to call hashtag 2020, with everything, with wax prices, with single prices, with you know, seeing the retail gobbled up even before it hits the shelf type of thing. Hobby wax out of control. So there's a lot of guys our age that have been doing this a long time that are extremely frustrated by this. But you know, this, like everything, will pass.
You know, you just said something earlier that sparked a memory for me. And I want to tell this story because I had lunch with my dad today.
Nice.
And he gave me that gene. Because you said it's genetic.
Yep.
And I don't know that that's not true, because my dad is a huge collector, and he happens to collect tools, and
Yep.
he uses them. He uses all the antique tools that he has, and he makes beautiful things like the Beast and
Like the Beast, yeah.
furniture and all sorts of stuff. He's incredibly talented. I mean, on a whole nother level of amazing.
Yep.
But that collector gene, I didn't inherit his creativity and his craftsmanship and all of that, but I did inherit this collector gene and his, receding hairline. I inherited that too. But what I remember as a kid, we would go to flea markets, and there were weekly flea markets, and there were bigger ones, once a month. And my dad would drag me around these flea markets, and similar to today, it's mostly junk, right? It's
Right.
mostly crap. But I would walk around. All I was looking for,
Card.
baseball cards, sports cards, and God, I used to, and I would then beg my dad, and we weren't we were a normal middle class family, but things were, there were 3 kids, and
Yep.
my mom
Yeah.
worked at home, and so it wasn't like there was just money falling out of my dad's pockets as he walked down the aisles. And so for him to say yes, I knew was a big deal.
Uh-huh.
To buy cards. And the flea markets, I remember finding, there'd be the weird, some table with all sorts of just other junk, and then a box of 83 Donruss or something, and packs were 50 cents or whatever they were, a quarter, whatever they were back then. Oh, Dad, can I get 2 packs for $1, or whatever? And more often than not, he said yes, especially if I had to be good, right? You got to be good,
Right.
stay close, don't get lost, all that kind of stuff. But I was always hunting for cards at flea markets. And I hope somebody has some memories like that, similar to that.
Oh, yeah.
And can relate to that story. Not often would we, I guess sometimes you'd walk around and there'd be literally a guy set up like at a card show, just in a flea market, with cards.
Yep.
It wasn't often. There might be one table like that out of several hundred at a flea market.
And he probably cleaned up on the tools.
Oh, my dad. And guess who was his porter?
You.
Me and my brother. We got to lug all this crap around for my dad.
Well, that was the fee for the cards.
And I learned from him the art of negotiation.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, you never settle for this is all truisms for me today. You don't settle on the sticker price. Everything can be bartered and bargained and haggled.
Yep.
And like, if you pay the sticker price, then you're the sucker. That's what he would always tell me and show me, in the way that he would just walk away, and I would see, just like in card shows. I remember, yeah, I'm really going kind of all over the place, but these memories are just flooding in.
Yep.
I remember in 2014 when I went to the National in Cleveland and saw you for the first time, by the way. That's
right. But we didn't know each other then.
We did not know each other then, but I remember seeing you and going, that's those back pages. That's him. And my wife was with me, Julie, and she's like, so? And I'm like, you don't understand. It's a big deal on Freedom Cardboard. Remember that? Freedom Cardboard?
I do. Yeah.
FTB. Anyway, at that show, I wanted a Jackie Robinson autograph, which I still own. I bought it.
Nice.
I think I had some price on it, and I was like, no, here's what I'll pay. And he said, no, I can't do it. And I said, okay. And I walked away. And I remember him literally, I got, I don't know, a couple 100 feet away, and I turn around and this guy's literally kind of fast walking toward me. Okay, and my dad always said, make him tell you you're crazy at least twice.
Oh, okay.
Because what's the worst that can happen? They say no.
Right.
Okay. I'll go down the aisle and find another one. Thank you very much for your time.
Right.
And that just these lessons that he taught me about being a collector, about, you know, the hunt and the joy of the hunt. And he loves the hunt too. He loves finding the bargains. He loves finding the deals. And at card shops, you could do that, right? Back in the day. And even today still, you know, smart card shops put out the dollar boxes and they'll throw a couple of nice little cards in there and maybe somebody will find them and get a good deal, you know?
Yep.
And it was that, it's been that way for decades and decades. It was that way in the 80s. It's that way now. So those lessons that he taught me have served me well over the years as a card collector, let me tell you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I hope he listens to this because he'll get a kick out of that, me telling him.
Always learning.
Always learning. And maybe he didn't even know I was paying attention back then, like kids do, right?
Right. Almost like osmosis, really.
Almost. You just kind of suck it all in and it becomes part of you. And what a great legacy too. You know, my dad knows about my collection and comes over. He's just like, you're crazy. And then I go to his shop and see all his tools and I'm like, you're crazy. So we both, you know, we have this.
That's where the crazy comes from.
Yeah. That's where thanks Dad for giving me the crazy. You gave me that crazy. And
now, have you ever had anyone say to you in relation to cards, like, how do you know so much?
Yeah. Especially people that aren't into cards.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. It's just, you know, I was joking about osmosis, but, you know, it's just, that's part of it, in my opinion. It's being around it, thinking about it, interacting in it. And it's just, you know, like I always say, you know, share your knowledge, you know, keep learning and always learning and all that stuff, because it's stuff that I believe in. It's, you know, it's just something that you just want to keep. You know, we all like to look backwards on, you know, the history of whatever it may be, but we're at the same time we're marching forward. You know, I try every day to learn something new.
Have you learned anything on this podcast?
I did.
Oh, really? Please enlighten me with what you're.
Now I have to remember what it was. I have to remember what it was that I learned.
That I like Buddy Bell?
No, that I knew. That, you know, you used to go to the flea markets with your dad when he would go hunting tools. I knew your dad was a tool collector, but it was nice to hear the story.
Yeah.
Hunting tools when you were a young boy.
You know, it's funny. Hopefully people that listen to this are hearing two guys that, and it's good this is at the end of the podcast because only the diehards will be listening at this point.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
But what's really cool, Eric, is you and I have been friends now for years.
Yep.
But we come from we're in two completely different parts of the country. We were both brought up very differently. You in a very urban environment, me in a city, but not the same as you.
Right.
We have different family backgrounds. We have different educational backgrounds, work history background, all sorts of education, you name it.
Yep.
And yet you and I are like brothers, right?
Yeah.
And we have this common connection of cardboard where we can sit here and talk for 50 minutes and it feels like 5.
Right.
And I hope people just hear that brotherhood. I hope people hear when Eric and I talk to each other that it's just two buddies just talking and sharing stories. And that's how you learn. That's a good point. you're open minded. You and I have different political beliefs. We have different everything. Like we are different people in
Right.
so many ways that society would look at us and go, y'all shouldn't be friends. Y'all don't have anything in common. Yes, we do. Au contraire.
Right.
I think we have, but that also creates that common ground, creates opportunity to share other things, about our lives. And I know a lot about your personal life. You know a lot about my personal life.
Yeah.
And so cards can do that if you are open to it.
Right.
And if we don't share it, you've said this so many times, Eric, and you're so right. If you don't share, I mean, what's the point of having all of this stuff and not sharing it? Why have it in a dark hole? What good does that do anyone other than your ego or whatever?
Which is awfully, what good is your ego when you're all by yourself all the time?
Yeah, very short-sighted, very narrow-minded, I think.
Which, okay, back in the day, like when we were kids, it was all about, well, I know about this player, so I'm going to stock up and not tell anybody. But, with the internet and everything else, you're not fooling anyone anymore.
Right. There are no secrets anymore.
The best case scenario is you try to get ahead of some, you try to get ahead of a wave if that's your thing, and then capitalize when the wave hits. But, and like you had just said, this community is all about the friendship. I cannot stress that enough. People that are listening that have not been to the National, there's no way to describe the National to someone who's never been. And then you and I both know people that attended last year for the first time, and they're not necessarily their mentality has changed, but they see things differently now. At least that's my belief and my findings. As
Couldn't
far as
agree more. Totally agree with you.
Yeah.
And that's just what this hobby can do. You got to be open to it, right? And you got to understand you're not going to get along with everybody too.
I was just about to say that. Yep.
There's no,
and that's okay. It's like real life. Not everybody gets along. It's just that's the way the world works.
Well, let me tell you that I am a blessed man because you and I get along, and I'm honored to be your friend.
Well, likewise, brother. That street runs both ways.
Can you believe we've been talking almost an hour just BSing here?
It never does seem that. It never. Doing these with anybody, it just never. And and you and like you had mentioned, you and I talk a lot. Not being recorded, and it doesn't. It does not feel like, oh wow, an hour's gone by.
Well, for people that don't know, when Eric and I talk privately, it's just like this. It's not.
Yeah,
pretty much. There might be a little more personal details that we're not sharing here, but it's not.
Some spicy language on occasion, but yeah,
that's for sure. And if you don't have that in your collecting world, find somebody that you have common ground with. Find somebody that you relate to. Find somebody that's similar in a lot of ways, and I bet you can spark a friendship that can last you potentially the rest of your life. And
you could spark that up at the card show, at the card shop, even the card show, especially the National. I know I keep going back to the National, but when you're in the National, you're in the big room with 20,000 other collectors. Everyone has something in common, whether it be 88 Donruss or 2020 Topps. I mean, it's just something in between. It's just an amazing thing that goes well beyond the cardboard.
Absolutely. Well, man, I think we'll let everybody, get on with their day if they're done listening.
Probably a good
idea. Why don't you tell everybody? I mean, this is your second appearance on this podcast, but for those that maybe missed the first one, tell everybody where they can find you on YouTube and Instagram and whatever else.
Yeah, you can pretty much find me everywhere at those back pages.
There you go.
You hope you put the link in the description below, but
I will.
I have a good feeling that everyone who's been listening has an idea who I am.
But in the podcast world, right? You might
Well,
start.
that's true. I'm not. I haven't dipped into the podcast world yet, so this was a nice change of pace.
You're dipping into it right now. See.
Yeah, I said this was a nice change of pace.
Well, my friend, I really appreciate you coming on, and
my pleasure, Mike. Really, really is my pleasure.
It's so funny that we do talk before. Like I called Eric and, hey, this is what I'm thinking for a podcast, and he goes, you bet. Eric and I talked zero about what we wanted to discuss other than the general topic of card shops when we were kids. That was the only spark we needed to have an hour-long conversation about all sorts of stuff.
It's great. I mean, and we could easily do another hour, but we've put them through enough.
Well, I promise you'll be on again, and
anytime.
I'll make sure Andy's here for you. I know you're probably disappointed that you're not.
That's right. Where's Andy?
Where's Andy? He'll be back. Well, thank you, my friend. Everybody out there that's listening, thanks again for just supporting this podcast. Check out Bench Clear. Benchclear.us is our website. Tons of great content creators out there. We're all just trying to show different aspects of this hobby, and hopefully you saw a glimpse today of what it can bring you in terms of friendship and knowledge and all these things that, is wonderful, wonderful parts of this hobby. The best part of it, no doubt. And the cards are cool, but friendships last forever, right?
That's very, very, very true.
Everybody take care. Have a good night, good day, whenever you're listening. Eric, you got any final words?
Share your knowledge. Keep learning. Always learning. Remember that you matter. You may not think so, but you do.
I'll end it with my normal. Keep collecting. See you guys later. Have a great